never get tired of that opening intro. It just makes me like so happy. And lately my energy's been all over the place. So if I can get into a good spot for this.
For 28 seconds, we're good.
28 seconds, we're winning. Folks, Jenn's sick. All right. Give her some love in the comments if you are here. She canceled everything pretty much all week. And this was one of the things that she kept on the calendar. So huge props for Jenn being here, showing up and trying.
I tried to have a couple calls on Monday afternoon and I completely lost my voice in the middle of a call. And I'm like, I don't know what to do.
I'm done. If only you just had a bowl of lemons, nearby. It makes me think that, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I woke up on my wedding day a few years ago, I woke up with no voice.
Great.
So it was like kind of more of like a Demi Moore, like a raspy kind of situation going on. I had this cold like creeping up on me. And then the morning of the actual wedding day, I was just nothing. So all I did all day was drink hot tea, suck on lozenges, drink lemon water, so that at least during the ceremony, people might actually be able to hear me.
Okay. All right. That's
I do.
Yeah. Wow.
But then we had improv open up our reception.
Of course you did.
We had an improv group and we didn't know beforehand what the different games they were going to play, but they did one where they reenacted all the moments leading up to the wedding.
Oh, that's so cute.
And this kind of short statured man with a goatee played me. And he talked like this the whole time. It ended up being really quite comical. So,
that's awesome.
Sometimes those awful moments turn into really great hilarity later.
It is really funny. Yeah, I love that. Oh, it's such a great, if I got married again, that's a great way to do it. Have an improv show.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant idea. Yeah.
Yep. Really improv. Funny. It was a lot of fun. We played in 2 of the games and then we let the troupe do their thing.
I would be like, I don't want to be involved. I just want to watch. Like, just pretend I'm not here.
We had the option to bow out, but we decided we would be good sports about it. So we played with them and then we let them do our thing. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, folks.
It's not, but who cares?
We're just warming you up. We're warming you up. We're warming Jenn up more than anything. As before this call, she was sitting in the wrong studio for StreamYard for 20-ish minutes. So that's the level we're bringing today. So today is about goal setting. So first, let's just remind you all that in this season of Unscripted, since this is the second episode of the year, and some of you might be joining us for the first time, this is what we're calling the promotion season. So all year long, our episodes are geared towards helping authors, whether you've published 2 years ago or you haven't published yet and it's about to happen. We're helping authors figure out how to do that with intention and integrity, I would say.
Yes.
But the other thing that we're doing is shamelessly promoting Jenn's not second book. It's your 12th in real life?
8th, close.
8th, okay. Second, meaning that it's a little duo. We got a little duo happening. Publish Your Purpose came out a couple of years ago. And now Promote Your Purpose. This actually comes out this month, right? Officially?
It comes out on Tuesday, and I'll tell you, being sick, the weeks leading up to the launch are not ideal timing. Comes out on Tuesday.
But you know what? That's actually a perfect example of this key point. Write it down, folks. Your book is forever. Mm-hmm. So even if sickness derails your launch plans leading up to your book coming out, your book is going to be there when you're not sick anymore. So you pick up the baton when you can and you go for it. And truly, you have to be promoting all of the time, like not just during the 2 weeks leading up to launch, not just the first month after the book comes out, but continuously. Otherwise it fades to black.
I wish we had like a visual of that. That was very good. Well done.
Okay. Because I don't even know what the stats are for 2025, how many books came out in a year or how many are published every single day. But without putting the spotlight on your book on a routine, regular basis, it's going to be very easy for everybody to forget about it. Right. And if they don't know about it to begin with, They can't even forget about it because they weren't told about it to start. So you have a lifetime of opportunity, basically, to promote your book. And this is where a lot of authors struggle, because authors think about the story or they think about the content, they want to write the manuscript, but they don't necessarily know or want to promote, because it's a whole other brain skill, right? That you need, a whole new set of things that you need to learn if you're not somebody with a marketing background or a business background or that kind of thing. So Unscripted this year is really meant to help you all out. Okay. You don't need to purchase a copy of Jenn's book in order to play along. Of course, we recommend it because it's fabulous. But if you go to unscriptedforauthors.com, and we'll throw that into the chat, but I believe it's also with the show notes already. That tells you all of the episodes that we've got coming up this year, their topics. It also gives you the opportunity to opt in to getting a free workbook, okay, that accompanies what we're doing here every single month. Okay. And again, you don't need the actual physical copy of the book in order for this to be filled with gold. All right. The other really neat thing is that I'm doing it with you. So I'm a case study all year long. I am working through the workbook in real time. And the last thing that I will say is, if you are here live, you also have the chance for on-air coaching from the two of us for free as a part of showing up and being a part of the conversation. It does not get better than this. Okay. Also, can we just talk about how on point we are with our branding? Okay, y'all? Like, this is a labor of love. We have completely scaled up this thing that we started 2 years ago on a whim.
We did.
All right. So do we have anybody here? I don't know if I can't see people because I'm not logged in, or if maybe it's just quiet this morning.
I can see that there's people watching. I don't see any comments yet. So if anyone would love to post in the comments, that would be wonderful, because it does. We had a number of people live last time, which was fun.
We did. And people were engaged and they asked questions, and it made it a much better episode. None of that was great English, but I would love to see you show us that you have a pulse by saying something in the comments if you can.
And you and I are both good unscripted, hence the title. So if you have a question that is not related to today's topic of goals, you can still ask it. We are perfectly versatile in being able to bounce over to a different, answer a different question. So it doesn't have to be on brand for today's topic directly.
Completely. All right. So goals.
Yeah.
Let's talk about them.
Shall we?
Why don't we just start with like baseline? How do goals create direction for content, visibility, and business development?
Okay. You're doing the Lord's work here today by carrying my corpse through the show. So I'm going to do my best.
I feel like we need one of those like theater hooks.
I'm like the Grim Reaper, just like slowly slothing across the stage right now. Yes. Okay. So, it looks like Christy's here. Oh, and she moved to a YouTube channel. How amazing. Thank you, Christy. All right. So we have at least Christy who is engaging in the comments. Christy, while you're here, why don't you throw in one of your goals for your book? Since Allie and I know you both well, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. So when we think about goals, I think the biggest, like if I had to like summarize all of chapter 2, is to be specific with what your goals are to yourself, instead of trying to follow someone else's goals or what someone else is telling you your goals should be. Because I think the reality is that if I just kind of say, hey, my goal is to sell a lot of copies of my book, like, what does that actually mean? And what's the bigger reason why I want to sell a lot of copies? And so if we look at Simon Sinek's Start With Why, that book from, 15 years ago, probably at least, if we really just start to kind of uncover, like, why are we doing this in the first place, we can start to really get deeper and deeper and deeper as to like the core purpose behind what we're doing versus what might come across as like vanity or ego or, other surface level reasons why we're doing it. And once we kind of get to the bottom of that, then we can create a goal We can create a SMART goal, which we can get into in a minute. We can create a SMART goal around that why. That way we have very clear things that we can measure versus just saying, I want to sell a lot of copies of a book. You can't really measure that because like, how are you measuring impact on like, oh, I just want to sell a lot of copies? Like a lot of copies to me and a lot of copies to you, those two numbers might be dramatically different. So like, there's really no way to measure any of that. So I think the more we can just kind of focus on what we want, not what you're telling me I should want, those couple of things is kind of like the core of where we can kind of like jump off from.
Yeah. So folks, in January's episode, okay, and again, if you go to unscriptedforauthors.com, you'll see when that episode aired, and you should get the links, right, to where you can go and replay that episode. All of January's episode was about this core concept of why, right? It starts there because you're always going to tether your next move back to why you're doing it, right? That's why we're underscoring it again here. Because to develop goals without understanding purpose or intent just end up being like empty promises, right? More than anything else. So that's kind of your foundation. Now I want to just talk briefly about, so I did the exercises, right? So if you're playing along and you've got the workbook, okay, then chapter 2 stuff starts on page 3. If you do happen to have an early copy of this, then chapter 2 begins on page 15, and the same types of exercises are in the back of that chapter, right? When I sat down to start thinking about goals for my 2 books, so I have, why not? I'm going to flash them to you.
Again, it's promotion season. Get these books out here.
Season. I don't know why I didn't have them out already. I was too busy promoting yours, which is so like just normal life, right? I'm so good at promoting other people's and I forget to promote my own. And so this whole unscripted season for me is putting my feet in the fire, not holding them to the fire, like literally putting them in the fire, because I forget to talk about my own books. So I have a memoir, Dear Universe, I Get It Now. And then I have a nonfiction book, more like writing reference, Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. Both are award-winning, yay me. And I hardly ever talk about them. How bonkers is that? And that's because I'm often talking about everybody else's, or I'm talking about other aspects of business. So when I started to think about goals for these 2 books in preparation of today, I had to really go back to what am I trying to achieve today in my business on the whole, and how do my books support that endeavor? Because I don't want to have my books live in a separate ecosystem over here as an author and my business to live over here and be a total separate entity. And that has gotten me into trouble, not trouble, but that has been a hard thing for me to bridge in the last 9 years, right? So 9 years, this November, I will have been in business, but Dear Universe came out in 2020. Do Not Write a Book came out in 2024. And I've often felt like being an author is over here and being a business owner is over here. And that's not helpful to me because it makes me feel like I have to have a totally separate plan in place from over here. So the reason I'm saying all of this is sometimes your why hooks into perhaps a business that you already have that is already functioning and that you wrote the book to support the business to begin with. Because here's the thing, and I've seen this happen from authors. After their book comes out, and a lot of my authors are prescriptive nonfiction authors, though I'm going to be changing that, sorry. And they get the book out into the world and they do the same thing that I've done myself. They desegregate their book from their business, even though the original intention behind their book to start was to have the book funnel people back to the business.
Yeah.
But they're running promotional strategies as separate things. And I'm constantly saying to them, time out, pause. You're going to end up doing double the work with double the energy required, double the time investment, right? Because you're trying to run people to your book and you're trying to run people to your business. And really they're playing in the same world, right? So how can you basically maximize your efforts to make sure that your books are doing the work for you to hopefully bring people back to the business, which is what it was supposed to do to begin with?
Yes.
Right.
And I'll just say that in May, we will have an entire conversation around building your ecosystem as an author. So all the things that you're talking about now of kind of the divergence between like you as an author versus you as a business, like in May, like the whole topic in May will be, how do we make sure that everything is aligned, and what does the ecosystem look like now, and what could it look like in the future once we blend in our purpose, the impact we want, the goals that we have, etc.
Yeah. So I want to talk about like the ecosystem evolving here in a second. But before we get there, what would you say, Jenn, to people who maybe have a book without having a business? So the person who wrote the Vanity Project, and I don't mean Vanity Project in a bad way, and I don't mean that it was published by Vanity Press. I mean, they did it more for an intrinsic value. It was something that they wanted to check off their bucket list. It was something they always wanted to do. It's not attached to an LLC or something like that. Like, where would you say that they should be starting from a goal perspective there?
I would be looking at going back to last month's conversation of why, like, why did you do it in the first place? And then I would look at what do you want to be doing with it? Because most of the activities that you may be considering or want to be considering to do with it could very well lead you down the path of having some kind of business activities. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you wrote it as a legacy project and you were like, I just want to put my legacy out there. I don't really care what it does. I want to impact people, but I'm not putting a lot of energy toward the how that's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you start getting people to say, well, could you come talk to my group about the group that meets that's around this type of topic? Or would you be open to being a guest at my book club? Could we use your book as part of this class that we're teaching that has something to do with what that person's story is? All of those things, if you start to explore it, because what I try to tell people not to do is get like plan too quickly almost, if that makes sense, where like if I say, hey, Allie, will you come do a book club with me? You're like, oh my God, that was amazing. I had so much fun. And then I say, will you come do this lunch and learn? And you're like, I could do without doing the lunch and learn. I kind of prefer the book club format. It felt better. You want to kind of like test out what some of those things feel like, because you don't want to say all of a sudden, okay, I got invited to this lunch and learn, let me go do 100 of them, when you actually find out on the first one that you don't really enjoy using your energy in that particular way, versus like a book club where you're like, I really like using my energy that way. So you kind of want to explore, just especially for people that don't really have a business tied to the book, like just kind of see what feels good, what feels aligned, and then start to do a little bit more of that and see if it still feels aligned, because it might feel aligned doing it 10 times and the 11th time might be like, this was too much. I don't want to do this anymore. So it's really trying to like really baby step your way into it versus like being like, okay, wow, I'm getting interest and people are asking me things. Now I'm going to turn this into something that's like this big thing that I wasn't originally planning on.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. Do we have, so I'm realizing now, remember before we started this episode, I was like, should I log in? NAB streaming? Well, apparently I should have logged in because I can't see or interact with the comments.
Oh, that's why you should have logged in. Now we know.
Now we know, but
it's only been 3 years.
It's going to kick me out. So do we have anything happening in the comments in response to some of this before we
do not. We have people watching, and we had Christy who commented a few minutes ago.
Hello, world. Okay.
Yes, please
right.
Interact.
All right. So let's go back then. So we've established, okay, got to anchor into your why, right? Yeah. You want to think about your business and your book kind of working together, not in silos. And if you don't have a business, we've talked about some ways to kind of like work around that. So I want to go back to something that we were talking about before with the ecosystem, and the ecosystem basically having room to change, right? So one of the things that I think it's really important for authors to keep in mind is that just like writing a manuscript is an iterative process, so is promoting the book. There is going to be an evolution, right? Things are going to shift and change. They should. All right. You don't want the manuscript to stay in a first draft state, right? You want the manuscript to get to whatever draft state it needs to be publishable. So that means your goals while you're writing the book will change and shift based on which stage you're in. But that also means that your goals around promotion will shift and change depending on your promotional stage. So like the activities or the energy that you might put into a book launch or the first few weeks after a book is published, very different energy and activities usually than like the consistently like kind of bringing people back to your book over a course of time as that book gets older and time goes on, right? So one of the things that authors tend to struggle with is at least from what I see, right, is they start to get towards handing that manuscript over to the publisher. The idea of the book becoming a real product becomes real. Their brain starts to go into overdrive about what happens with the book once the book is ready to be like in pre-sale, right? Mm-hmm. Then their list of pre-sale activities grows a mile long. Mm-hmm. They get really invested in having a really successful launch. Mm-hmm. The book comes out into the world and they're so exhausted that this beautiful moment that should be like kind of climactic mm-hmm. ends up just being real dull.
Yeah.
Because they are fried. And then once they get through the publication of the book, all of a sudden it's like crickets. Mm-hmm. And it's not because they don't know that they would benefit from continued promotion or keeping the pressure on. It's because they've bitten off way more than they can chew, right? Mm-hmm. By trying to do all of the activities, right, in a short period of time around the time that book publishes, because everybody talks about how a book's best success, right, is like when it first comes out. Mm-hmm. So we want to avoid that, right? Because again, yes, maybe a little extra pressure around that book launch, book publication date for sure. Mm-hmm. But choose your activities strategically and wisely. Mm-hmm. Choose what feels realistic and still allows capacity for joy. Mm-hmm. That your hard work is paying off and this book is coming out into the world. Okay. And then table some of those other activities for later on. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. I think when Dear Universe was like, here's my story, y'all. I knew at 5 years old was when I knew that I was destined for books. And it was my dream to write books and have my name on the cover. And I took a very long and winding road to finally get there, which is pretty much what this book is all about. So when this book came out in 2020, I was 30 years old. I was 35 years old. My son was 5, the exact same age that I was when I knew this is what I wanted to do. I can't even tell you what this moment was like. I get goosebumps even just saying this out loud. Like, I cried when I opened up the box of proofs.
Yeah.
Because this was like a lifelong dream that had been actualized. And I was like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, mm-hmm. I will feel like I have lived my life because I made this one thing that I truly believed in at 5 come true.
Yeah.
Right. But I was also, because I'm a visionary and an ideas person, right? I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that. Like, I was not only like just thrilled personally, okay, but I was like, oh my gosh, all the things, mugs, pens, just like posters. I mean, it was insanity.
You're like your own one-woman parade.
Oh my God. Yeah, actually, okay. Because it's show and tell.
Why not? Please. This is why I love that we're unscripted, because we get show and tell time.
Who needs one of these?
Oh my God, that's big.
Okay. All right. And if you all saw when I got up, I was wearing something around my waist. It was my back massager.
We are a mess.
Okay. So I got this. Why? Because I was really hoping I was going to have an in-person launch, but COVID had other ideas.
It did.
So this was just like in the background on an easel during my virtual launch. But like, people, I went overboard. And then some of the things that I was like super excited about didn't happen for another 18 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was
okay. That's the beauty of a book.
Like the thing that ended up happening 18 months later was perfectly timed in reality, because I didn't have energy to create that thing. It ended up being what I called the Bravery Book Club. It was a book club with a bravery problem. That was the tagline. And it was a small container of women. We read the book, but we came together once a week for like 6 weeks, and we did really concentrated personal development writing based on the prompts that were already in the book. And it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I didn't have energy for that, like right when the book came out, right?
No,
and
especially
I didn't read it yet. Like, so it wouldn't have landed the same way. So give yourself grace, phase things out, strategize your main marketing efforts, save the others for another time, do what you can, be realistic, right? And take a deep breath. The book is here, it's gonna be here.
Be unconventional about it. You don't have to follow what other people are doing. Like, of course, there's best practices and people do a lot of things because they are effective. But even like thinking about my launch, yeah, it's on Tuesday next week. And all of the, I've been sick for like 2 weeks. Like, it is what it is. But like you said at the time, like the book is still going to be here. But when somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, what's the big thing that you're doing for your book launch? And I was like, I'm not focusing on the launch day itself. And I was sharing how we're doing the promotion season of Unscripted. I'm like, to me, spending dedicated time for 12 months throughout the entire year to go deeper, to provide value to other people, to brainstorm around your books and have my book be the tool that's helping us do that. That is a way better launch strategy, if you will, than me throwing money at some kind of other, tool that might get me visibility for a couple of minutes or a couple of days. Yeah. So, and it's unconventional because I don't know that anyone's like out there doing a launch that's like over a 12-month period of time. But I'm trying it and we're going to see how it works, right? Like, because why not? I've done 7 other books. This is the 8th. So like, to me, I like to experiment with my own book to see, because every book has chapters. So however many chapters you have, like, could you do something like what we're doing? Could you do a virtual book club that you're doing? Like there's a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be that you're putting all of the energy and eggs into one day and one day only, because when you happen to be sick on the days leading up to that day, then what? Then you just count the whole thing as a failure. Like that's not helpful, especially because you put so much energy and effort into it leading up to it.
Yeah. Okay. I did see Christy write, my book goals have changed and my promotion strategies continue to evolve. Heck yeah. And they should. I mean, here's the other part that we didn't even address. And so let's address this now before we start talking about how to make goals smart. Guess what else evolves in this process?
What could it be, Allie?
You evolve, right? The way that I think about my book, Dear Universe, is completely different now than it was in 2020 when I wrote it. Sometimes embarrassingly so, right? Because eventually you look back and you're like, oh man, I wish I had written that differently. Or now I have new wisdom about that life experience. And so I would have completely had a different approach or perspective on what to do with it. But not only do I see the material differently, I also understand its place in my ecosystem differently, because I have continued to sharpen or polish or chisel, whatever word you want to use, what I'm attempting to do in the world with people, right? Which then naturally is going to change how I use the book strategically, right? So you are not stagnant, and therefore neither are your books, right? As you evolve, they too evolve, even without anything changing on the printed page, which is this kind of amazing thing. So let's dive into then making goals smart.
Yes. Okay. So I want to actually use the example that's in the book itself instead of trying to come up with a new one, because my brain is not firing in all cylinders. So I feel like most people know what SMART goals are, but we'll just do a little recap of SMART goals. So instead of having a vague goal, a SMART goal is something that is specific, that can be measured, that is attainable, that has some kind of timeliness structure to it, and that's realistic. So instead of, okay, so the example I use in the book is I want my book to appear on a bestseller list. Okay, so now we can just run through, like, is it specific? It's like it kind of is, but kind of isn't, because bestseller could be New York Times, it could be Amazon. Like that's not, like, there's a lack of specificity with that.
Right.
Measurable, No, there's no time. There's nothing measurable about it really, because like, yes, you can hit it, but because we don't have the specificity of what we're hitting, it's not really measurable.
Yeah.
Attainable, if it's Amazon, sure. If it's New York Times, probably not. So we really need to kind of know what that is. Realistically, again, is it realistic? If it's Amazon, maybe. If it's New York Times, maybe not. And then timely, there's no time structure to it. So it's like, I want it to be a bestseller. Okay, when? Like what period of time are we working with? So the way that we can kind of, and the book kind of walks through what the new goal could look like. So if the first original goal was, I want my book to appear on a bestseller list, one new goal could be, I want my book to be #1 on the Amazon bestselling list in the business and leadership category within 1 week of my book launching. That checks all of the boxes of all the smart pieces. Or the new goal could be, I want my book to become a New York Times bestseller as soon as it launches, as I've grown a following of 500,000 people on my mailing list. Also checking all the boxes. So that way it kind of breaks it down into which bestseller list are we actually looking at here, and what do we need to get there?
Yeah.
And I have like a couple of other examples that are in the book, but just to kind of give you an idea, like when we're using something vague and cryptic, it doesn't really serve us, because we want to really be able to kind of track and measure our success and know that all of the marketing activities that we're doing can actually tie back to that goal. And if you can't tie the activity to the goal, it means it's not specific enough.
Yeah. In manuscript development, this looks like somebody coming to me and saying, I want to write a book by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so end of the year might be the timepiece. But to understand if that's realistic and attainable, right, we have to have an understanding of like, how dedicated are they going to be?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to work? What draft stage are they already in? Right. And so that is then where we have to kind of do some digging to actually map out the year. And that's kind of, to me, where the measuring comes in. Mm-hmm. Measuring your, like, okay, what's actually realistic by ironing out a loose schedule. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. If you're talking about like, and book is pretty broad also.
Yes.
If you're talking about a 35,000 word manuscript, that means something very different to me within a year's time frame than a 80,000 word memoir that you haven't even penned a single word of yet. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Much bigger lift. And so, is it realistic and attainable, even though you said you wanted it by December 31st of 2026? Don't know. We need to define book. We need to define draft state. Mm-hmm. So in the kind of evolution of a manuscript, if you will, setting up goals can look like, let's maybe not decide like the whole book's going to be done by December 31st. Let's like backtrack and actually let's make a specific goal around getting the first draft done. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and then that makes the goal itself a little bit more realistic and attainable. Right. And now we could put a new time frame on it. Mm-hmm. Based on the fact that we're looking more at the first draft. We're not looking at like the entirety of a whole manuscript.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Because that can be overwhelming to like really think about the entirety of something. And there's so many phases from draft to final that is actually in a book form. Like there's so many different versions of that in between. And so just kind of identifying, what your actual goal is. The shitty first draft is oftentimes the best goal, because it gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom within just the definition of that.
Yeah. Now here's the other thing that just came to mind. Sometimes people make a goal and they think that the goal is reasonable, but that's because they lack the information that they need in order to make it more specific, more realistic, more attainable, right? A lot of people who are first-time authors and have like those initial conversations with me, they're like, is it realistic to get a whole book done and published by the end of the year? And I'm like, no, like, but other people have done it, right? And that's because my perspective on doing it the right way and getting it done and having it be really great and then working with the right publisher automatically means that a year won't be long enough.
Yeah.
Right. Even though I know other people do it in that time frame. Mm-hmm. But once I explained that, like, on average, most of my indie and hybrid publishing partners need at least 6 months from the time the manuscript is turned over, that changes the whole picture for them altogether. But without that piece of information, they could be coming up with any kind of goal,
Yeah.
right? Without knowing that it's not realistic or attainable. Okay.
And that's why having conversations with people and providers and such ahead of time can really help shape what your goals can be realistically.
So take advantage of free calls and conversations with experts. Research, but make sure you're finding the reputable sources. Obviously, both Jenn's book, Publish Your Purpose, and my book, which is basically the fraternal twin, Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. Both of these resources are absolutely incredible. They're invaluable in terms of the information that they provide. And so if you're a first-time author, these absolutely should be on your purchase list, one or the other or both, in terms of just giving you a leg up. So, Jenn, should we go over and use me as a case study and talk through?
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to see. Last time you found a typo in my workbook, so let's see if that happens again.
Okay, no, I don't think I have any notes for the workbook this time around.
Wonderful. Appreciate it. Since it is live on Tuesday.
Okay, so let's incorporate some of the things that we've already addressed. So I started my process here of first trying to think about what exactly are my business priorities for this year, to then understand how to get these books to tie into that strategy and have everything be aligned and a part of the same ecosystem. Okay.
Can I pause you for a second? Just emphasize what you just said is that you're looking at your goals for this year. Like you're looking at goals for this time period. You're not bringing in weight or extra from past goals. And I think that's a really important distinction.
They're gone. They've also faded to black. So we're talking 2026, right? So what I'm aiming to do in my business in 2026 is to increase my revenue, specifically through coaching people in memoir, right? I want to let go of the other genres. So for me, that means I need to strengthen my authority, my visibility, and my qualified lead generation, right? In order to do that, but I also need to have some sustainable infrastructure. Now, the reason that last part is important, is because I might have to do a few things to build that infrastructure before promoting books becomes the automatic thing that I do for activity, right? So the books help with this overarching goal, right? By supporting revenue, reinforcing positioning, avoiding busy work, and fitting with the realistic solo operator capacity, meaning I'm a one-woman show, right? The books need to the book goals need to all help those things. So, Dear Universe, I get it now. Its place in this overall business goal is emotional authority, lived proof of memoir transformation. It's to help build trust. It can be an anchor for speaking, and it can be an entry point into that memoir work. Okay. This book demonstrates that I've done the vulnerable work of writing a memoir myself. I've survived publication, and I know about all of those mindset things that happen for authors that are putting out a piece of personal work. I've navigated the visibility of what it is to put a lot of your most intimate stories out into the world. And I've integrated the experience of both what's happened to me, but also putting the book out there, right? So my goal is to deliver 6 story-centered speaking engagements in 2026 that generate at least 10 qualified memoir coaching inquiries.
Okay.
And we can break that down into the SMART goals in a second. Do we want to do the second book, or do you want to just stick with one?
Let's dive into this one first.
Okay.
Capacity is minimal here. So,
all right. So that's Dear Universe.
Okay.
So that's the goal. I've already got it down into SMART, but you tell me where you want to go next.
All right. So my mind immediately went to 6 story-centered speaking engagements that bring 10 qualified coaching inquiries. my mind, like those, that's already there's a lot of specificity around it, but my mind goes even deeper to think of like, what else could you include around what the speaking engagements are? Are they free? Are they paid? The qualifications, like what's your conversion rate of the qualification of those inquiries? Because it's 10 inquiries. Does that mean you want to have 8 of them turn into coaching clients? Or is it just, 2 of them are turning into coaching clients? So like my mind went to like one layer deeper.
Okay. So I do have listed formats: podcasts, community groups, writing organizations, libraries, conferences, virtual guest teaching, small stages. I'm kind of open to like a variety of experiences to try to figure out where's my sweet spot. But I hear you on, are they paid? Are they not paid? And then even if I get 6 engagements, 10 inquiries, the next piece, the next layer deep of measurable would be how many conversions, right? Yep. Okay. So how many conversions? So we went, let's say 2 conversions. I'm not necessarily tied to the formats having to be paid. It's a bonus if they are.
And I think that's a distinction that needs to be noted as well, is that for you, that is not a priority. Yeah. For someone else, it might be a priority that it needs to be paid and it needs to lead to additional business. A lot of authors will use free speaking opportunities to grow their list, to build their network, to get qualified inquiries. It's a matter of finding where you land on that, because someone might be watching this and say, well, I have to get paid for that. And then they might feel some kind of like guilt or some emotion around that. And it's like, no, do not put any emotion on it. It's like, that is just the reality. You need to get paid for it. You need to get paid for it.
The way that I see this too, is that, so one of the things that I know, because I can see myself doing more speaking in the future and having that be paid. But what I know is true of speaking is that having assets that show that you are a good speaker, like a speaker's reel, for example, can be a really important piece. Well, until I have more speaking engagements done to build out a speaker's one sheet or a reel and to have tested content, I don't know that I would personally feel confident enough to ask for money to speak if I'm still testing material, right? So if I do some speaking engagements for free, to me, there's a long-term benefit that might come with payment down the road. And so these speaking engagements work double time, right? Yes, they allow Dear Universe to be kind of front and center. So maybe it leads to book sales. But ideally it's leading to those inquiries and conversions. And then in the long-term instance, it's leading to having more experience speaking to then build up those assets later on. So you can already see, even within this one goal, right? I can build out these multiple layers and like next steps down the road without losing focus on what we're doing.
Correct. Yeah. And if you're tracking it appropriately, because it doesn't have to be super sophisticated, but if you're saying, your 6 story-centered speaking, doesn't matter if you're, teaching at a library or you're on a podcast, if you track in more detail, okay, I spoke to 6 libraries and this is what my conversion rate looked like. I spoke on 6 podcasts and this is what my conversion rate looked like. When you look at it from that standpoint, if you're then looking at your numbers 6 months from now and you're like, okay, wow, in order to meet my goal for the whole year, I really need to find a way to get 8 more conversions. You can say, okay, was it podcasts or was it libraries that was able to give me the most value for my time? And then you can kind of put more energy into one versus the other if you're trying to like meet a bigger goal.
Yeah. I'm taking notes.
And this is all like the unsexy side of the stuff, like there's not like fun and sexy to be tracking measurements like this, but it's the stuff that does really move the needle forward, because you get that real data. Because, there might be something like, it might be that libraries don't convert at all, but you love being in a library setting, you love teaching a local community the thing, and you still might say yes to all of those opportunities because it fills your cup, even if it's not financially filling you, And so like having that data helps you make those decisions more intentionally.
Yep, totally. So what I've got is basically, to make it achievable, it's 1 engagement every 2 months. The relevancy is directly supporting memoir coaching pipeline and authority positioning. But what makes it realistic for me is like thinking about 6 speaking engagements, but like all different types. Right. And not just narrowing it down to one, keeps everything open for possibility and opportunity and potential.
Yeah.
It casts a wider net while I'm attempting to kind of get back into my groove here of like using my books for marketing. And 6, when you've got 12 months to work with, feels doable. But here's going back to that infrastructure piece, right? The way that I was seeing this is if the book talk is meant to lead people back to me into that memoir coaching, inevitably what's going to happen is they're going to hear me speak and then they're probably going to go to the website, right? If the website isn't ready or the coaching program isn't built or things are outdated and don't look right, I might lose people once they come looking for me if my infrastructure isn't solid and where I really want it, right? But I can't build my infrastructure and put my focus there and be intentional about that while also trying to go out and pitch myself, right, to speaking engagements and even know what it is that I'm talking about when I'm still like over here trying to build, create, and get things figured out. So the way that I'm seeing this is like, okay, if I really need all of Q1 to get things where I need them to be, then I've only got 3 quarters of the year left. To have it be more than 6 engagements with now only 9 months to work with, right? That starts to feel icky in terms of my energetic capacity, right? So folks, you're seeing how the sausage is made. Right? There is a lot that can go into this because you have to consider so many factors. And this is why throwing spaghetti up the wall isn't always going to work.
Yeah. And what I love what you're doing right now is that you're being realistic. Like that, I think of the SMART goals, like the realistic is the one that is the most personal to us as a person, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really, because someone else might be looking at this and saying, wow, 6 and 12 months. Like I want to do 6 this month. And it's like, great. If you have that energetic capacity for it, you do you, boo. However, it has to be something that is maintainable and sustainable over time, because otherwise you're just going to come out of the gate strong and you're going to fizzle out, just like we're talking about in terms of launch before.
Well, and I think too, like you have to think about the fact that not every ask or every pitch is going to turn into a yes, right? So for those people who are like gung ho and they're like, I'm going to do 6 in 1 month. Well, what are the quality of those 6? And how many people do you have to pitch in order to get 6 yeses to bring you in, right? How many other candidates for speaking, depending on the type of format, are they looking at, and they have to choose you, right? At one point, a couple of years ago, I was on every podcast that wanted to give me a shot, and almost none of them converted to anything. And what did I learn from that? I learned that I wasn't being strategic enough about which podcasts I was choosing. So it wasn't enough for me to just be on a dozen podcasts. I think I was on like over 20 podcasts one year. And it looked great to add the tiles to my website, right? But for what effort? I didn't see it growing my email list. I didn't see it increasing book sales. And so there I was like going on any podcast that would have me, and it didn't translate to what I wanted.
But think about your goal there, right? Your goal wasn't just visibility. Someone else might be starting at absolute nothing right now, no podcast appearances anywhere, and them going all in to get on 20 appearances just to be able to have those tiles on their website might be the sole goal, and that might make sense. But in your case, that wasn't the goal. So like, this is why goals are so important, because what sounds like a failure to one is a success to somebody else, because it's just all in how we're thinking about it.
100%, completely. So you have to really, this is what, go back to your why, right? You have to ground in what are you trying to achieve, right? And where I'm at now and what I want, what I'm seeking, what I'm trying to do in my business is extremely different from somebody who's just starting out. Right? So this is also why don't compare yourself to other people. Okay? Because we are all in different places on the journey. Like full stop. All right. It's not like you cannot compare. It's not apples to apples. It really isn't. So ground yourself in your own why, ground yourself in what's realistic for you, your own energy, where you're at, and, forget looking. I mean, you can look at other people to emulate, to get ideas, inspiration, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, this is about you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never going to be successful if you're trying to walk somebody else's path.
That's why I just love that Oscar Wilde quote of "be yourself because everyone else is already taken." Like, it's just so perfect and always resonant.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Should we move on to the other one?
Yes.
Looking at the time.
I love all of what you just did, though. I think this is such a beautiful, and I love, obviously we're very intentional about all this, but I love that you have the memoir and the nonfiction to kind of show, because it's very, like, everything that you just shared is like such a really good example that other people could follow for memoir.
Okay, so now we're moving to different genre. All right, so this is the prescriptive nonfiction. This strategic role for this book within that bigger ecosystem, right, is intellectual authority, publishing credibility. It can be a filter for serious writers. It can be a quiet funnel into my free call, which is called the story stroll. And it can be a pre-qualification for coaching if I chose to use it that way. Mm-hmm. Okay. The book signals that I understand the craft and mechanics of writing and publishing. The fact that I understand publishing and that I am strategic and not all about just feelings and emotions and vulnerability and things like that. Okay. So for me, the goal with this book this year is to integrate Do Not Write a Book into 12 strategic marketing content placements and generate 24 story stroll bookings directly tied to the book. So basically, high impact content moments like LinkedIn posts, emails, guest appearances, unscripted references like this one, and generating 24 of those free calls as a result of talking about this book.
Okay, so 12 strategic content placements resulting in 24 story strolls.
Yep.
What is the next layer deeper of what are those 24 story strolls bringing you?
This would also be where we want to get some of those 24 story strolls to convert into some sort of paid offer.
Yep. Yep. And, for people who've been in business for a while or have been doing, even if your book isn't a business yet, but you've been like in enough conversations, you might be able to go back through and say, okay, if I look at the last 24 story stroll calls I had, how many of those turned into some kind of paid engagement? Or if you don't have 24, you can say how I did 6 and then just kind of roughly translate it. The math doesn't always math perfectly, but it'll give you a better sense instead of just completely guessing.
Yeah.
So for folks that don't have
So what I would say is let's go with a 25% conversion.
Okay.
And that's based off of conversion data that I already have from story strolls.
Yep.
I mean, it's a little bit on the lower side, but because I haven't necessarily strategically attempted to have this be kind of like the first point in that funnel, we're gonna go with 25. Yeah.
Okay. So that means then the conversion would be 6. Okay. So then you have the 6 from that, and then you have the from the other. Okay. All right. And then that also, then thinking about, like, again, measuring like the metrics, right? So if you're saying 12 strategic content placements, and those content placements could look like a bunch of different things. And for authors that have more than one book, will there be opportunities where both of your books will be crossing over in the same opportunity? For example, a podcast where maybe you're on there to be talking about your memoir, but they ask you something that brings up your expertise as someone who helps authors. And then you can mention this other book at the same time. So like that will not always be the case for every author.
Right.
But for some where you're writing about your deep expertise, chances are there's going to be a crossover. So it's almost like now you have like independent goal for book 1, independent goal for book 2. And then there's also like hey, here's this like conjoined goal here that could work as well.
Yeah, totally. So the way that this is achievable to me is to just think about one really intentional piece of content per month with a goal of 2 consult bookings per month tied to the book, right? That would get us to the 24. It would feel like it's a direct consult pipeline kind of thing, right? And then eventually supports getting people into that coaching that I want to do. The realistic piece though, right, is the fact that it's thinking about one piece of content a month is far easier than thinking about 24 pieces of content, and making sure that they're aligned. And then of course it's to do this by the end of the year. So the time bound piece on both is December 31.
Mm-hmm. Which is perfect because we will be doing this over the 12 months together. So we can be checking in on those goals as we go.
Yeah, exactly. So we're at the top of the hour just about. So we're gonna need to close out here. Number one, I want to welcome any questions or comments into the chat, especially if you found this useful or if you have something more specific that you want to ask as you're working through this for yourself. And of course, we would be happy to see comments after the fact, especially if you're doing this exercise on the other side of the episode because you were waiting to hear more about SMART goals from us before you did it. So throw that into the comments while Jen and I talk about what might be coming up for us, and then we'll make sure that you all know about the next episode before you leave. So Jen, what do you got for the people?
I have for the people that the book and the workbook, because the workbook is now a physical workbook as well. I know, she's gorgeous. And the ebook will all be out on Tuesday, the 17th. So that'll make it easier in the future for us. Instead of having to go to my website and purchase it, you can go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the places. So I'm excited about that. And as I said before, the flu has kind of thrown me off course a little for my promotion, but I didn't put all my eggs in all the baskets for just the 17th. So I'm just fine on that front. So if anyone is watching this and would like me to come to your people and talk about anything related to book marketing, I'd be delighted to.
Awesome. All right. Well, you all know now what my goals are for my 2 books. So if you're looking for a speaker,
yes.
All right. On your, let me just reiterate for y'all, podcast, community group, writing organization, library, conference, small stage that you've got, or even like, you've got a community of people that you bring guest speakers in for. I would love to have a chat. You can DM me on LinkedIn. But beyond that, what I was actually going to talk about before we dove into here and I had the opportunity to say that, I have basically repurposed my 60-minute consultation to something that feels so much better and more aligned with where I'm going this year. So I'm now offering something called a memoir compass calibration. This is for the first time aspiring memoirist. It's a 60-minute clarity call where we dive into your mission, message, and motivation so that you have the foundation for actually getting going without wasting time drafting the wrong thing. I've only got about 8 of those because I'm keeping it small and contained, but the investment is $295 and it's totally worth it, folks, for having an understanding of those 3 things before you get going. All right. A lot of the time, clarity actually comes before you pen a word, not while you're doing it. So if you're interested in that, same thing, DM me and LinkedIn so I can send you the link to enroll. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
It's such a steal too. I wish more people just spent a couple $100 at the start of the process to have more clarity, because there's nothing more painful than having a manuscript that's written just a little bit off and you have a lot of rewriting to do.
Oh my gosh. And I want to avoid that for all people, especially the first-time authors, because that's where it ends up being more costly, more expensive, and way more disenchanting when you get
finish it.
You get too far down the road and then there's all that rewriting. So you stop altogether. We don't want that for you.
No.
All right. We are coming back next month.
We are.
In March. What's our date?
The 12th, because that's the room I was in for 20 minutes before.
March 12th. Okay. So folks, March 12th, we'll be back. We'll be focusing on chapter 3, which is mindset.
Mindsets. Yeah. Marketing mindsets.
Ooh,
this is where, I know. Yes. Yeah. This is where all the emotions start to come in and try to throw us off course. And so the more we can prepare for that now, the better our long-term success will be later.
Yeah. So March 12th, chapter 3, go to unscriptedforauthors.com if you haven't already. Make sure that you've got the workbook. We highly recommend it. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Allie, for carrying my weight today. I appreciate it.
Anytime.